All right. Hello, everyone. Well, that projects pretty well, I guess, big room. So, hi, everyone. You're here, hopefully, right talk, Mastering Didactic Design. The goal here today is to talk through slide design, share some pearls, pitfalls, and we're going to delve into that. I'll start with introductions. I'm Michael Gottlieb. I'm Vice Chair of Research, Professor of EM, and also Division Director at Rush in Chicago.
I'm Kasha Gore. I'm APD at Rush, and I'm very happy to be here and giving you guys this talk.
And also here in spirit is Srini Nation, who's also the president of ADIM, who was the meeting at the exact same time of it. So it was instrumental in the slides and is here, through that piece of it. No relevant disclosures. In terms of objectives, so basically looking at common slide design pitfalls, 10 evidence-based strategies to enhance slide clarity and impact, how design choices affect learner understanding and retention, and then integrating in cultural humility and active learning to promote inclusive education. That's about as much text you're going to see on slide the rest of today. That is required by the CME guidelines, but now we're going to talk about real kind of slide design stuff. Maybe. And so start off with slide design, it matters, right? When you have a bunch of words on there, there's a bunch of words on the screen, you're not going to pay attention to me. You're going to read this. And this is often when we coach our learners and we have to look out for ourselves as well. Slide designs can either help you to emphasize points, to draw something home, to drive this emotional tie, because we know that talks that have that ethos, pathos, logos, that have that component or logos, that have that part that ties into you as a human being, that gets you to pay more attention. And slides that are very boring and have tons of text on there don't. So how do we make that emotional tie? How do we link you to the patient in front of you? And so today we're going to talk through 10 common pitfalls. And we're going to try to draw these out and highlight areas where we can hopefully all improve and walk away with at least a couple of different ways we can improve our slide design going forward. And number one is keep it simple. So there's something called the 3x5 rule. No more than 3 lines, no more than 5 words across. That's your maximal kind of threshold. Because beyond that, you made what's called a slide document. A slide document is basically a version of a document on a slide. If you want to do that, have a handout. If you want to put it up there, the problem is the more words you put there, the more you're going to pay attention to what's on the screen instead of me. Keep it simple, 3 words. Then you look back at me. You stop looking at that because it wasn't interesting because nothing else happened on the screen. You pay attention to us talking and that gets you a lot more engaged in what we're trying to learn from this. You can always send handouts. What you want is the person paying attention to the person speaking. That's what the goal of this is. So the more you put up there, the more you pay attention to it. There's studies that have looked at this in the capacity of, for example, watching a movie with subtitles. And try doing this. If you watch a movie with subtitles, your eyes stop looking at the character and you start reading the subtitles. And all of a sudden, you lose track of what's happening on the screen. Similar things exist in slides. The more text you have there, the more you take away from listening to me talk, and the more it's something that I could send you in an email. Number 2, consistency is key. This is something that we don't always think about, but when you're designing your slides, it should have consistent flow. It should follow across. You should have a general thing. Notice how consistency, tip 1, tip 2, there's a thematic element. We like patterns. It helps us brains think. It's constructivism. It's our brains trying to build a story together. The more consistency, whether it's across typeface, whether it's across your style, the more it threads a story together. And so taking a moment through there, there's even simple things you can do. Like, for example, if you use PowerPoint, there's a theme assessment you can do at the beginning. It'll set the entire style across all the other slides, so you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. You can use complementary colors. It's easier on our eyes. Using black on yellow is really hard to read for us, right? Those are all these old slide decks that were like white text and blue font. And yes, they're contrasting, but they're hard on our eyes. Choose consistent colors. And there's things like colors.co and other programs that you can Google and see that allow you to determine what are complementary colors and how can I have a consistent flow across them. Make text that is easy to read. And I mean, if you look at this, I threw up kind of 2 different examples, but one thing is typeface. What you put down there should be a reasonable size font. The rough rule is 24. 24 and smaller, or I should say smaller than 24. It gets harder and harder to read in the back of the room. You have to assume that everyone in the back of the room wants to see your slides just as much as the people in the front. So less than 24, you're going to have trouble seeing. If they're squinting to see, they're not listening. You want to choose easy typeface, and there's called serif fonts. They're basically things like Arial, Helvetica, things where it looks nice and crisp. The more curling there is, The more it may look cool, but the more it taxes your brain. And what I want to do is I'm going to minimize the taxing of your brain. I want you to pay attention to what we're talking and learning about and not trying to decipher out the curly cues of the letters. Capitalization, has anyone ever gotten an email with capitalization onto it? Does it ever make you say, oh yeah, this is great. I can't wait to read this. I tire all, no, there's no email that has all caps. It's everything good. And the problem is it checks their brain, makes us think they're yelling at us or that they're excited. And I can't read that more than like a sentence. There's no benefit to things like capitalization that you couldn't remove out from there with a bold. Or you know what? If there's only 3 things you really wanted to say in there, maybe those are the 3 words of your slide and everything else didn't really matter in the first place because you're going to be talking anyways. You want to keep it simple. Pick things people can read easily. Remove the cognitive load. 24 is your maximal thing. So we've learned 2 things now. We learned 3x5 rule and we learned 24 or bigger. Use images wisely. Your images have to have a purpose every single time. They should serve a goal. Otherwise, put blank text on a screen, and that's okay too. Your images need to complement what you want to say. If you want to tell someone about, a patient, put a patient of a picture of a monitor of a patient on the screen. Bring something to bring it home. Saying 24-year-old patient with the right lower quadrant pain who comes in with, that's not useful. I'm talking about that. That just makes you pay attention to the screen. You want to see a person in front of you so you remember, oh yeah, I'm a doctor or soon to be doctor, and this is really like what I'm taking care of. This is the person I'm taking care of. Think about how they tie in, they supplement your story. Number 5, optimize video integration. This is actually one of the things that's kind of cool. So for one thing, as I said kind of earlier, I do ultrasound. I love ultrasound. It's very image heavy. But knowing how to use it right versus wrong can be the difference between a lecture that feels very stumbling and very difficult versus a lecture that runs smoothly. If you're going to play videos, number 1, download them. Don't ever rely on internet resources because you never know how good the internet will be. Ideally, if it's something that can be looped, and I use ultrasound as an example here, you can just simply create a GIF, but you can create a GIF and it'll basically play throughout there. And so it could just run in the background and it creates less taxing on the machine, which makes it run smoother than if you try to play a video as an auto load. Similarly, if there's a way you can use video to break this up, right? Our natural cognitive capacity is somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes. I'm going to stop at the 10-minute mark because that's how that works. And at that point, your brains start to break. So if you're doing a longer lecture, maybe you can pause, have a patient give a story. You can pull in a quick video, a news article, something that breaks your voice up, resets the audience, and then you go right back into it. So you can actually use video as a cognitive break to reset things if you're giving a solo lecture in another creative way. My favorite way I've seen this being done is one of my friends did a qualitative study. She presented it at one of the prior SAEMs, and she had the patients read off their statements. So halfway through, she paused, and then she did a statement, and it was read by the patient. How cool is that, right? With consent, of course. And so there's different ways we can use this to augment our lectures, but we have to be strategic about how we do so.
I clearly did not have as much coffee as Mike did. Actually, he talks that fast every single day. I get to work with him. That's just his speed. I'm a much slower speaker. So I don't know about all of you, but I love incorporating evidence-based medicine into my talks. And one of the ways we love to do that is by putting a chart up there, right? It's like, oh yeah, here's the force plot from this research study. It has about 5 different footnotes, and go ahead and read that now. It's really hard for your learner to actually take that in, right? So a more effective way to integrate research and evidence-based medicine into your talks is actually taking the distilled down biggest point and putting it into a big format, right? So if you've got a really good absolute odds ratio that you want to share, put that percentage up there, right? Put those numbers up there. And so I think that's going to be much more effective than going ahead and putting at, control, print, or what is that? Print screen, right? And copy and paste of that chart up there. Consider using, like Mike just said, audio clips. If you're doing a qualitative study, have your research assistant read off those wonderful quotes that you've gotten instead of putting a big paragraph up there and having your learner read through that, right? It's just distracting. All right, enhancing slides with embedded active learning. we all know that our learners nowadays are way more used to active learning, right? They're way more used to being in a group and studying together and incorporating polls and things like that into your learning. And so anything that you can do to embed things directly into your slides is going to break up the monotony of that PowerPoint and actually engage your learners. So whether it's using a QR code to link to just your small group session, and here's the prompts for that, or using a whiteboard type app that's out there. Engage your learner in different ways. And I've got a couple of different, sorry, wrong way. There we go. So there's lots of different modems to do that nowadays, right? Google Slides, most of us are familiar with that. Canva, I know my residents are super savvy with that. I've gotten a lot better at it, and it's really a great way not just to do slides, but also lots of different other things like infographics. The other ones up there, are really unique. Haiku Deck and Pichakucha are kind of more artistic ways of sharing your information and knowledge. So I encourage you all to just kind of take a look at what's out there that's outside of your regular, PowerPoint, Google Slides. Nope, continue to go the wrong way. There we go. And then these are just some examples of things that you can do to embed things like polls, right? There's Slido, there's Poll Everywhere, Mentimeter. A lot of these too are now integrating with your Google Slides to actually incorporate them into as add-ons. So take a look at what's your add-ons, what's your availability to do an add-on to your PowerPoint or your Google Slides. I went the right direction this time. Tip 8, avoid long lists of references. What I want to do when I see a really long list of references, that's like your last slide, is I want to be able to click on it and be able to open it, right? And so I can't do that. And if I take a picture of it, then I have to actually read that text and then input it into my Google, and that's a lot of steps. So the likelihood of me actually doing that and looking at that reference later on is like 0%. Whereas if you put up a QR code that has things linked in, and your learner can then actually click on it and links directly to that paper, they're much more likely to use that. So consider doing that as opposed to a long list of references. Tip 9, really important, intentionally incorporating diversity, inclusion, and cultural humility into your talks. Whether that is utilizing, there's a coach in PowerPoint. I didn't know that until recently, but it actually does screen for things like, are you using inclusive language? So screen your talks, screen your papers, everything for things like that. There's actually a lot of other tools out there that are able to screen for inclusive language. But then there's other things that you kind of want to also just get a second set of eyes on your paper, your slide deck. Make sure that you're thinking about things from multiple perspectives. And sometimes you get so involved into what you're trying to say that you kind of forget to look at the additional perspectives. And then I don't think any talk at SAEM this year would be complete without us saying, doing a nod to AI. There's so much more out there nowadays when it comes to AI and how it can help you with your slide presentations, from it actually helping you with the formatting to obviously helping you if you've got some writer's block and you need some help with content. Use it wisely. There was lots of, I just finished the amazing session that, there's a lot of ethics that goes into AI, so you have to kind of balance out all those things, but I think if we don't start incorporating it, you're going to be behind the game. So our key takeaways: slide design does matter, right? Small little changes can make a big impact. And then intentional design improves your learner's experience. So we'd love to take any questions. Thank you very much for listening, and be here at 5 p.m.
So what questions y'all have? Or strategies? That's also fair game if you're like, hey, this is something I do that works. Yeah.
Hi, Mike.
Good to see ya.
I always go back and forth between Like I'll give you two examples. Big lectures in ASAP and around. Diane Birnbaumer, who I love, she's a little like a runaway train. The good thing is she's going to put 2 hours worth of material in 1 hour of lecture. I also like Amal Mattu. He's just the opposite. He has this great cadence to his speech. And when he makes an important point, he slows down and over enunciates the point. But I like that. So do you have a thought about that? Because you were just saying how you're a little more of an enunciator. Mike is a little more of a speed demon. So what do you guys think about that?
No, I think it's a good question. It comes down to kind of figuring out your style. And not every speaker is going to be identical. There's some similarities and commonalities across that. And I think that's a really key point is what you want to say, you pause and you emphasize it out. Whether it's to do it like, so I'm going to use Mike Winters, who's a friend of mine who talks very slow and deliberately in that. And if I did that, you would hate me because I can't do it. He does it amazingly. He's a highly skilled speaker, and the way he does it, it's perfect. I was like, if I try to do it, it won't work. That's not my style. I can slow down my cadence a bit and let you all cognitively process things, but I'm not going to be able to speak like him, and I can't speak like Amo. But at the same time, I figure out my own style. I know when I want to pause and emphasize something. I know when I want to, call something back. So for example, 3x5 rule, size 24. That's the third time you've heard, but you may actually remember by the Larry tonight. If you think about it, I saw one of you all tomorrow. I was like, hey, what do you remember from the talk? Oh yeah, I remember the 3x5 rule. So there's different ways you can splice things in to ensure that what you want people to take home, you emphasize. It might be using your slides. It might be the way you present it. But I think you have to find one that's kind of, both genuine to how you are, and then follows best practices. Because if I sit here and I go like this may be how I walk around my shift all day, but that's not going to necessarily land well in a talk. So you solicit feedback and you figure out your style to it as well. But there is nuance to it, and I think that's why we like seeing different speakers. That's why we like listening to, I use Amo and I use Swami as two different examples of highly skilled speakers who have very different styles, but are though extremely skilled. What do you think, Kash?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one right way to do it. I do think you have to figure out what works for you, because I know that if I talk really fast, I'm going to stumble over my words and I'm going to say a lot of ums. And so I've practiced and thought about how do I do these talks without doing that. And that's how I came up with, I'm going to slow down my speech and I'm going to get out the most important points in as few words as I can. So just kind of have to figure out what works for you.
A question for you, Dr. Gottlieb or Dr. Gore. What is the rule of thumb with using AI-generated images? I know we're not supposed to put copyright images on our talks. We could get sued. But what about AI-generated images?
I am a huge fan of AI-generated images. I actually really like them with caveats. In general, depending on the program you use, they will either release it to you for use or not. So understanding what are the limitations of it is able to be used out for that. But there's times where I could spend, 7 hours trying to hand create some really ideal image. Or like when I gave a talk, I gave a talk out at Michigan, and I was talking about an elephant in the room. And I looked forever and I could not find a good image of an elephant in a room. I typed in AI, show me an elephant in a really cramped room. And within 5 seconds, it showed me an open image I could use. And it was perfect for emphasizing that point, because I wanted to highlight something challenging. I had the image I wanted of exactly what I wanted. So I think there's value in that, understanding the limitations of it. But you also have to double check, because there's nothing more describing. Then we have an image in there. There's 6 fingers, and it doesn't match what you're trying to do. And one of the arms is coming up halfway out of the chest. It undermines your image. So you have to be able to double check it. But I will say that me not hunting for another 5 hours to find an elephant in a room was worth its weight in gold to spend more time in the actual talk, as opposed to a slide that was one of a couple dozen.
Yeah, I also think that there's a lot of things that hasn't yet been with AI. There's a lot of things that haven't been made rules yet, and so I think that as we go forward, there's probably going to be potential things related to copyright, et cetera, as we go forward. I think that we're not there yet, but I think that's something that will come.
I think we're exactly at time. We're happy to answer any other questions that come through there. But again, thank you for showing up 5 p.m. And appreciate everyone's attention, and best of luck with your slides as you go on forward.